All right, good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're enjoying the show. I'm really excited with a relatively big crowd. I mean, everyone is giving up. It's Thursday afternoon. But I do have some superheroes till the last session. All right, today I'm going to be talking about Citrix Cloud and the collaboration that we've been doing with the WVD team. And here are the core goals of my session. I'm going to say why Citrix, but that's going to be a small part of my session. That's not my goal today. My goal is to go through step by step and build the environment right here with you in those 45 minutes to come. So we're going to do that. We're going to define each component. We're going to do each component. I'm going to discuss some architectural and scale consideration while we're doing that. So 45 minutes is going to be packed. Try to focus for 45 more minutes. All right, I've already said the word Citrix Cloud a few times by now. So let me step back. Citrix Cloud, like it sounds like Azure. No, it's not. It's not a hyper cloud like you think of the big clouds. It is a cloud focused on the workspace. So you'll find different services within Citrix Cloud, things like content collaboration, share file, things like virtual apps and desktop, managed desktops, endpoint management, and so forth. Those are the type of services you're going to see in our Citrix Cloud. So at the core of it, it's focusing around the workspace and analytics and networking components that help with that connectivity to the user, data, and apps. OK. What we're going to talk about mostly today is Citrix Virtual App and Desktop service within the Service Cloud. Again, the Citrix Cloud has multiple services. This is the one we're going to focus on. What you see on the whiteboard is a couple of ways you can get virtual apps and desktops from Azure within Citrix. On your left-hand side, there is your standard lift and shift. You take all the Citrix components, you build them as IaaS, and life goes on. You might have done that, or you could do that. But that's not the way of the future. The second middle bucket is Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop. At the core, what we're doing, we're taking those infrastructure components from Citrix and managing them, and you'll see them as a PaaS service. You don't need to update them. You don't need to install delivery controllers, storefronts, and so forth. Those are something we control, and you just take care of the VMs. The target VMs or applications that would live in the Azure resource location. Your right-hand side is a new offering we released about a couple of months back. It's called Citrix Managed Desktops. And in that one, we manage the infrastructure, and we manage the VDAs or the VMs. So you simply give us an image with the apps you want, and that's it. You get one bill from us that is about the infrastructure, the license, and hosting the VMs as well. By the way, we host the VMs in Azure. OK, today, our focus is going to be the middle one. And one key thing, I put a bracket around this, WVD integration support is only supported in those two models. OK, you're going to either use Citrix Cloud, or you're going to use Citrix Managed Desktops. And in both cases, by the way, our services run in Azure. That's part of the partnership with Microsoft. Sounds good? OK, on a high level, really 30,000-foot high level, this is how it's going to look like. Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop, our components, we're going to host them for you. They're always evergreen. We're updating the servers. We're updating the code. The middle bucket I'm referring to as your WVD entitlement. And basically, you get those things with WVD, part of your entitlement. I'm not going to go deep in that. On the right-hand side, that's your hosting infrastructure, which is Azure. That's where we use compute and so forth. OK. So why Citrix? I'd say Citrix has been adding value since the remote desktop services. It's a choice that you guys have been making. And now, as WVD is an evolution of RDS, those same value adds still apply. Nothing changed. So if you've used Citrix in the past, those same value add features still apply. I can talk to this slide for another 45 minutes, but probably I'm going to call out a few things. Like one example up there is the hybrid cloud. From Citrix Cloud, you can deploy to Azure. You can deploy to your on-premise Hyper-V. You can deploy to other clouds, other platforms, on-prem platforms. Other thing I would highlight, like optimization teams. Optimization is something we have. Microsoft Teams within the VDA or within the desktop. We're the first ones. As of now, we're the only platform that can optimize teams. OK? So this is all the summary I'm going to talk about from Citrix Cloud. But before I move forward, I'm going to go and show you the portal, the Citrix Cloud portal. Some of you might have seen it. Some of you might not. OK, it's citrix.cloud.com. That's the address, a cool one. And basically, you see all these tiles. These are very different services. Again, they're focused around the workspace. It's not like create me a Postgres SQL or something, or Postgres DB. It's more content collaboration, endpoint management, secure browser. A shout out to manage desktops here. That's our new service that I talked about, where we take care of the VMs and the infrastructure. It's essentially our DaaS offering, desktop as service offering. This is the service we're going to talk about today, virtual apps and desktops. Up top, you see different resources that apply across all our services. And the key construct here I'm going to talk about in a minute is a resource location. OK, going back to the DAC here. Now we're going to jump deep into the deployment. So before I do that, I'm going to give you a high level of how this deployment is going to go forth. The first two items on this list is essentially the marriage between the two clouds. And if I'm going to be a bit more technical, it's installing the components in each cloud that will allow communication to the other one. That's what we're going to do. The third item is basically what you've been doing for years if you're in the desktop virtualization world, is preparing your golden image. We're going to download the Windows 10 multi-session image. You're going to install some apps in it, and we're going to install what we refer to as VDA, Virtual Delivery Agent. The last two steps is essentially creating multiple VMs of the golden and publishing some sessions and desktops and apps to the user. OK? All that in 37 more minutes left. OK, let's talk about the first step. Create a resource location and install cloud connectors. So let me define. A cloud connector is a Citrix component that you install on a Windows server. That Windows server is going to be in your resource location, AKA the target. In this case, the resource location is Azure. If you're going to use WVD entitlement or Windows 10 multi-session, your resource location must be Azure. You can't do that on a Hyper-V cluster you have at home. You can do it with Citrix in general, but you cannot use that specific image. OK? That's the cloud connector. And basically, the cloud connector serves as a communication channel from the resource location to the Citrix cloud. Let's do that. So I'm here in the Citrix cloud. I'm going to click on Add Resource Location. I've already have one. By the way, the orange you see is because I created one and it's telling me this is not highly available. Please add another cloud connector. So I'm going to call it Ignite Demo. And that's a logical entity that we create in our cloud. Once that is done, not necessarily once done, but we can go now. OK, let's see how the internet is going to serve me tonight. If not, I do have a backup. But I'm going to close that and try again. Give it a chance. Cool. So I'm going to connect to the cloud connector VM. Nope. Seems the internet is not super excited with me today. Those are VMs in Azure, I think. OK. So we're going to go the other route, which is awesome. Actually, the WVD folks told me the internet is not super reliable, so watch out. And I did. So I'll walk through this video. So in this case, I'm connecting to the Cloud Connector. Putting in, it's a VM, again, in Azure. I log on to Citrix Cloud. And I go to that resource location, add connectors. And it's a simply 20 meg download file that you get. And it's a click-through simple installation. It's going to go through it in a few seconds here. The only requirement is, once it pops up, it's going to ask you to put in your Citrix Cloud account, which is normal. So you got to authenticate to the Citrix Cloud. And that is what's going to hook the VMs in Azure and the domain controller and so forth entities. And the Cloud Connector is going to be your proxy to our Citrix Cloud. After I put my credentials, I have many subscriptions in Azure. We call them organizations or customers. Click Next. And that's about it. Now you've already connected all your Azure resource location back to Citrix Cloud. Few seconds, and it's going to validate the connection here. And once that is done, the background is going to refresh and say, oh, awesome, I am connected. So if I go back to this view, what essentially happens, as I mentioned, it's a proxy. You're going to see also my domain controller pop up in my view, which is this domain controller. And that's the first piece of it. OK. So let's go deeper now. We understand what Cloud Connector is. We deployed it. Let's talk about some scale considerations. Our usual recommendation is to have at least 2 Cloud Connectors for each availability. I would say n+1. So what's this n? Our rough guidance is for every 4 vCPUs in Azure, we can handle about 5,000 VMs. VDAs is our reference virtual delivery agent. There's this paper down here that has in-depth scale numbers on how many you can host on different VM types, the time to log on, and so forth. So that's your n+1. If you've got 10,000 VMs, then deploy 2 Cloud Connectors plus 1. Definitely make sure you put them in an availability zone or an availability set. That'll be OK, depending on how spread you are. Cloud Connector needs to be part of the domain. And if you've got multiple subscriptions, all you need is VNet peering across of them. So that's the requirement. OK, let's go on to the next step. Now, I want my cloud, Citrix Cloud, to be able to talk to your Azure subscription. That's what we refer to as creating a hosting connection to the resource location. So in simple terms, a hosting connection serves as a channel of communication from Citrix Cloud to Azure, specifically to Azure ARM endpoints, where we can create VMs, delete VM, add disks, and so forth. OK. Let's create that one. I'm going to try to be optimistic. No. Maybe. OK. Sorry? Oh, thank you. So I tried to log on to this VM, and you know what? I'm going to do it from here, which I can. So basically on this, this is our GUI for Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktop Service within Citrix Cloud. You go to Hosting Connection. I'm going to, here you go. I'm going to say add a connection. And I'm going to define a few properties in here that gives you the key of what's happening behind the scenes. So I'm going to create a new connection. As you can see, we've got multiple platforms we can connect to. In this case, I'm going to pick Microsoft Azure. We also connect to Azure Global, to the different Azure clouds, Azure Gov. We're going to click Next. I'm going to give it Demo Connection. That's the connection name. Ah, damn. And I want to get the subscription ID. So those are the things I'm passing to the Citrix Cloud. OK, and I'm going to create new. Oh, no. OK, still slow. I give up on slowness. Here's the video. I'm going to go somewhere. OK, I said create new. You log on to your Azure subscription. Just normal. You need credentials to make sure that no one's hacking it, of course. So once you do that, what's going to happen in the background is we create a service principal. I'm not sure how many experts in the room around Azure AD. A service principal is essentially an identity. And that service principal, think of in the Windows world, service accounts. They're non-interactive accounts, but you can run a service under them. In the Azure AAD world, that means an application can log on to AAD without the interaction account. OK, so it's giving me permissions to do that. It's authorizing the service principal. Once we create that service principal, we give it contributor right to the subscription. That way we can do actions on it. Click Next. And then we enumerate region you're in. OK, and we can see all the regions that are within Azure. We click which one. I'm going to use the West US. Then it sees your VNets on the network. You decide where your VMs and desktops are going to live. You pick that subnet and that VNet specifically. And that is the second part of this marriage. Now that we have an entity, a service principal in AAD with contributor right, we can talk to Azure. OK. Let's have more fun and talk some architectural considerations there. Again, I defined what service principal is. Here's one thing. Some of you who are security conscious, I said, I'm going to create an identity in AAD, and then I'm going to give it contributor rights to the subscription. A lot of you said, no way. I'm not giving you that. I mean, I understand. Well, there are two best practice documents where you can manually create that service principal, and you can give it a narrow scope to a specific resource group, as well as specific permissions. I don't want contributor rights. OK, I'll tell you exactly what you need on each resource. Those two documents cover that. On a high level, this is one of the scalability points I tell people. Azure today allows you 1,200 rights per identity per subscription, which means we delete and create VMs a lot. Part of it is to save you money. We delete even the disks, and we reprovision them on demand. So that's a lot of rights we do, especially when someone is logging on in the morning for a boot storm. With that said, a rule of thumb would say limit it to about 1,000 VMs in each subscription, 1,000 VDIs. That could be 10,000 users or more, depending what you're doing, sessions or apps or VDI. Sounds good? Okay, before preparing the image, the one thing probably I wanted to show in here, in that video that I did, if you look up here, we do create an identity up there, which is Citrix-XD and so forth, and give it contributor right. Once again, you can manually create that identity, and you can give it right to a specific resource group if you choose to. Let's talk about preparing the golden image. And specifically today, we're going to be talking about Windows 10 multi-session, which we're going to get from the gallery. So to talk about Windows 10, I'm going to invite in here the best person who can talk about Windows 10 multi-session. That's Scott Manchester. Some of you might know Scott Manchester as the head of the WVD team. But I'm going to still give you one more data point, because I like to do that. He's huge on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So if anyone disagrees with him, you can always take it up with him.
Thanks. Thanks, Louis. That was an awesome demonstration of high availability demo, by the way.
I'm always ready.
He is prepared. That was amazing. Super excited to share with you guys some of the great work that we've done working with Citrix now for a number of years to build an image that we think is the holy grail for those of you in the audience that maintain virtualization environments. We've had server-based multi-session products in market for decades, and for the most part, server used to follow the release cycle of Windows, and it generally worked okay. Over time, we evolved the model of how we release Windows, and the code converged and diverged and converged, leading to problems in terms of maintaining app compatibility and dealing with supporting your image base across all of your assets, right? Your bare metal machines, your VDI machines, and your RDSH machines. And all of them being released at different timelines and then having different app compat stories. So to really solve this problem in a way that just atom bomb on the problem was to actually use the Windows code base and bring the multi-session capability into that Windows OS. That took a long time. That actually took our team about 3 years to develop that. And we'd worked with our partners like Citrix early on to do all the validation and testing, performance evaluation, app compat, and ensure that we produced something that we were really proud of. So we're really excited that Citrix, as part of our WVD partner and approved provider, is promoting this new value proposition to their customers through their great cloud-based offerings. And just a quick overview of Windows 10 multi-session if you haven't heard about it. Obviously, you're probably familiar with the server-based product. You're here for that reason. And then VDI, based on our Windows client-based product. And there's a lot of value in differentiating features in each of these. So what we attempted to build with Windows 10 multi-session was to pull the best parts of these two images together. And not only did we do this as a product team inside of Microsoft as the WVD team, this is now a product that is embraced and supported by all the other product teams within Microsoft as well. So I know some of you have had challenges in the past ensuring that you're working in a supported state, running Office in a multi-user environment, and we've been left and right and back and forth on what our support story is there. OneDrive and multi-session environments, all these kind of things has been a real challenge in the past. So with this build, you're obviously in a supported state now for Microsoft. You can run Windows 10 multi-user. We have this great technology of Logic for profile management and the advanced profile management solutions from Citrix. So you can really create a great environment for your users with Windows 10 multi-user. And as I mentioned, we spent a lot of years working on ensuring that the app compat story was there, but you don't have to trust us because we're making a promise to you that we'll make sure those apps work. So if you're migrating from a server-based product today, you're moving to Citrix Virtual Apps and Desktops or their managed service, and you've got assets on a server-based product, multi-session service-based product, we'll guarantee those apps will run on Windows 10 multi-user. We're making a promise to you through our App Assure program that those apps will continue to function. So we're removing that barrier that, oh my gosh, are my apps going to work? How much time is it going to take me to test and validate? What if I go down this path, I get halfway there, and then I find all these problems? Well, we're here to help you and support you. Make some guarantees there. Same thing as you're moving from different virtualization environments to the Citrix Cloud products and moving between your various Windows client-based products. We provide that same App Assure guarantee to you folks as well. So with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Loe to continue the demo. And also, I want to reaffirm our great partnership that we have with the Citrix team and appreciate all your help in helping us make sure that this image is the best product for these customers, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for visiting us.
Thank you.
All right. So we made the marriage, and now we're between Azure and Citrix Cloud, and now we're into preparing the golden image. OK, so you've done that quite a bit, but let me do one fun thing for those who haven't seen it yet. To get the Windows 10 golden image, anyone could get that off the Azure Marketplace today. That doesn't mean anyone could use it, just to be clear. You need to have the WVD entitlement. To know those entitlements, you need to go to a session for WVD, and they tell you the rules and litigations about how you can get it, E3, E5, M365, and so forth. But we're going to go to the marketplace here. We're going to search for Windows 10. Click on that lovely tile. You're going to see the different editions in here. I'm going to pick the Windows 10. I believe that's in 1903, if my memory serves me. I'm going to say create, pick a resource group, demo Win 10 multi-session. I'm going to leave most things as is. Lovely password rules. Next. I'm going to keep all the defaults here. And one thing I'm highlighting while I'm doing those defaults, it doesn't matter what they are, because when we create that VM of golden, we do not copy the properties of the VM. We do not. You enter them at the time. All we care about is the disk and the disk contents. If the VM is DS13 and you tell us create 100, we're not going to create 100 DS13. You got to pick it through our wizard. OK? And that's when you create the Windows 10 multi-click create. I'm not going to wait for it, because I have another one that's prepared already. I have a lot of backups. So I'm going to log on to the golden image demo again, give it a chance. I'm going to go to citrix.com downloads, and I'm going to highlight one point here. I'm going to highlight the component that you need to install on that Windows 10 multi-session, because it could be a bit tricky there. Looking at the components. OK, so would you guess it's a server OS, or would you guess it's a desktop OS? It's kind of confusing. It's Windows 10, but it's multi-session. As of now, the binary you need to download is called Service OS Virtual Delivery Agent. You do that, run it. It's not bad, but it's still a bit slow, so I'm going to revert back to my video. Fun stuff. I just don't give up. So, sorry, I am, oh, right where it was. So that's the installation. Basically, it's a click-through installation. You point it at your cloud connector. That's the cloud connector we created initially, because again, all the VMs within the resource location in Azure are going to only talk to the cloud connector. It's their proxy to the Citrix cloud. Everything else is a click-through, next, 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 finish. And if I jump through here, it's going to restart the VM, and that's about it. Once it restarts the VM, I would say shut down the VM. That's a must. Your golden image is now ready. Of course, you can install your apps and so forth, but in this case, it's a simple Windows 10 multi-session image. Let's talk about the golden image scale consideration. One thing I'd say, if you're going to be deploying to multiple regions in Azure, I would recommend that you copy that golden image to different regions. Do not use that same one from West and deploy in Australia. I'd rather you copy that image pre-hand. It does work for us, but I know it'll be better for you if you pre-copy that image. One thing to highlight, operating system is key in densities of VMs. So do not expect that Windows Server 2019 densities, if you put 100 users, you don't, but as an example, on a specific instance type, to be those same 100 users for Windows 10 multi-session. Windows 10 has Cortana, has huge search capabilities, and so forth. So those numbers are not exactly the same. But again, Windows 10 multi-session, on the other side, doesn't require an RDS Scal to be running. I do have a list of multiple optimizers that we have that kind of makes the image more nimble. Through years, we have that experience, so you can run that optimizer or different tools to make the image faster and to have higher user densities. Okay, so we prepped that golden image. Now into creating a machine catalog. So what's a machine catalog? A machine catalog is a collection of physical/virtual VMs, and they're treated as a single entity. We've got multiple provisioning technologies at Citrix. The one that is efficient or the one that works in the cloud is referred to as machine creation services. For machine creation services, you could use a managed disk, an unmanaged disk, or a snapshot of an image. We don't care about the VM. Again, I repeat that. It's good to keep the VM around when you want to update that image. You boot it, you update, shut it down, and update the machine catalog. But those are the requirements. Let's go and do it. So I go to the machine catalog node in here. And I'm going to say create machine catalog. OK. It's not bad. It's pretty. So you can see it says multi-session or single session. In this case, we're going to pick the multi-session because it's Windows 10 multi-session. That's the choice for Windows 10 multi-session or server. If you're doing single desktops, you do a single session. And we're going to use MCS in the resource zone that we created, resource location. Click Next. That's the picker where you can say, this is the image I want. So in this case, I'm going to do the demo image. That's our. It's telling you here, make sure you stop the VM. Because if you don't, the image might be corrupt. We're going to use premium disks. I'm going to talk a lot of detailed considerations here in a minute after I go through this GUI. How many VMs do I want? I'm going to say 1 VM. I'm going to use a technology we refer to as MCSIO. I'm going to skip on that now. Again, in here, you can say, you create the resource group, or you can pass me a resource group that I can use from Azure. The previous pop-up was, make sure that your service principal has access. Next. Demo. Next. OK. And after you put your credentials, you click Next, and here it goes. I already prepared a machine catalog. So we did a lot of clicking here, and that's the fun part of this session. So let's talk about considerations. There's tons of VMs in Azure. Which VM type should I pick? That's the first question that people ask me. If I'm going to give you a summary, I'm going to say if you're using a GPU-intensive workload, pick an NV3 series. Again, I always tell people test, 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 test. But if you don't, NV3 series. If your workload is high CPU, I would say use the F or FV2. I'm going to be more specific in the slide after. If your workload is more memory demanding, more balanced on the CPU, my pick is DV2 series. Okay? DV2, F or FV2, NV3s. That's kind of if you don't want to do any work or you don't want to do testing. We've done a lot of that. And that is your best guess. So what have we done? We really took across the Azure board all the 8 CPU VMs. You don't see them all. That's a subset. And we ran a test tool called LogMVSI. What it does, it assesses the user performance within the VM while it's doing those tests, okay? And those were the numbers. We ran knowledge worker, which is the heavier workload, and task worker, which is the lighter workload. That one is like mostly Office. This is Office and video and few other applications. Those are the numbers. The dotted line is the cost per user per hour. The bar is how many VMs were we able to cram on this VM, okay? So on the D13, we got the most VMs. That's really cool. But if you look at the price, it's very similar to the F8. It doesn't really matter for both workloads. That's why I say your best shot in here. Then we went in and did more testing and said, I want to test all the instance types in the series. And you can see F8 and F16, they're exactly the same price. It's very linear because you're blocked at the CPU first before the memory. They don't have it off RAM. As opposed to, my cheapest price point in here is the D13 V2. So again, if you don't want to do anything and you want to try in Azure, start with the D13 V2 and put most users on it. I'm assuming multi-user. For a single VDI user, my best bet is D2V3, actually, okay? Again, test, and more test, but those are the initial testing results. That's for the VM. Now, what storage? I said I'm going to pick premium. There are 4 different types of storage managed disks in Azure: standard, HDD, SSD Premium, and Ultra. Okay, let's start with first things first. We support 2 types. You can either use standard HDD with our provisioning or premium SSD. From the lots of testing we did, we didn't find huge difference in performance. When you've got a disk that's about 128 gig, both are giving me 500 IOPS. SSD might give me a more consistent, but it's not a big difference. The one big difference to pick premium is the fact you get the SLA. In Azure, if you use a VM with standard HDD, you do not get that 99.9 SLA. You got to pick a premium disk. That's the one difference. It might or might not matter, because if you have a pool of 1,000 VMs, you might not want to pay for the premium disk for that. You're OK losing 1 out of 1,000 VMs when it's a pool. So it's a decision you got to make here. From a performance, again, I'd say they're very, very similar performance. Actually, it's trickier in the premium because if you pick smaller disks, 32 or 64, you get less IOPS. Standard SSD starts at 500. Premium SSD starts at 120 for smaller disks. Again, keep those things in mind while making your decisions. Now, we also have a technology I cruised over called MCS I/O. In a nutshell, what we do, we have a filter driver. We capture those I/O and take them to RAM instead of disk. We cheat in that sense. Then we flush them to a separate disk, okay? We put that in play. This is HDD with nothing. This is SSD with no cache. SSD with no cache. Then I use 64 HDD with 2 gig cache and 64 HDD with 4 gig cache. And the sweet spot was this. As a matter of fact, with our HDD and MCS I/O, we topped an SSD managed disk VM. And the cool part is it's less about the cost in this case. It's about performance. That line is the response time that we measured within the VM for the user. And you can see with the SSD, it was around 880 or 8, I can't see that. It's about 50 millisecond difference in response time. Again, that response time is that for the workload specific. But all I'm saying, we were having faster response time even using HDD disks. A bit more geeky. If you look at the response time from perfmon, this is the response time of the disk writes. The lower, the better, by the way. The orange line is SSD disks. The blue lines is HDD. The reality, the blue lines are not HDD. It's us taking it to memory, then flushing back. But that's part of the technology that you can utilize. So here's the kind of summary on architecture or scale-based for what VM, what disk should I pay. I mentioned it, DV2 series, DV13 specifically, F series for CPU. Premium storage, I'd still advise it if you want that SLA. And that's kind of the high-level thing. Consider MCSIO or actually use it as needed. OK, back to the deployment. We created the VMs. Nothing is published yet. So now it's time to create a delivery group. That's where you publish apps or you publish a desktop and assign user to that. OK, I'm going to go to delivery group. I already have one, but I'm going to create a new one. Click Next. It's very simple. OK, it tells me there's this machine catalog that has 2 VMs in it. OK? I'm going to pick one of the VMs and publish it. And I'm going to say all users. You usually don't do that, but I'm going to say all users are going to see that. I'm not going to publish an app, but that's where you publish an app. I'm going to publish the whole desktop. So I'm going to add. Multi-session, if I can type, Win10 demo. Allow all users, click Next, Next, Win10 MS. So there's the user view and there's an admin view. That's why I entered it twice. And that's about it. Now we have a session that's already deployed. Let's go and see. You know what? There's no fun VDI session without connecting to the VM, so I should. We go there. I'm going to go to my workspace configuration. This is the link that we provide you from the cloud. You click on that puppy. I do have my credentials saved, log on, maybe. OK, and that's the Windows 10 multi-session. We're going to launch it. Yes, it's doing it. And basically, one thing I highlighted here, you can see this is Windows 10. If I do a WinVer, and you can see all these users logged on. OK? So one thing I'm going to highlight, there's a construct in our product called Autoscale, and that's around the delivery group. So you can have schedule-based. You can say, OK, start the VMs at this time, shut that down at this time. Or it can be kind of load-based. As the user is logging on, if there's only 10% left, start more VMs and so forth. I'm only kind of highlighting it because it's a key money saver for you. really key money saver. OK, for those who like to take pictures, I decided to put all the links that I referenced in each slide in here and describe them. And I know everyone is super excited trying this, but you might not have a Citrix cloud. So this is a promotion that we have through Ignite, where you can log on and you can get a Citrix cloud and use it with WVD. And with that said, I really, really, really thank everyone for coming in and taking the time at the last session, in the last session of the day before the party. With that, enjoy the party, and please, please, please don't forget to put your evaluations. Thanks, everyone.